super common argument within the world of photography is whether to shoot JPEG or RAW. Now, there's no right or wrong answer to this. It depends on what you shoot, how you want to edit, anything along those sort of lines. There are different applications to each file type in the world of photography. Today, I'm going to run through exactly what each of them are and their pros and cons, advantages, disadvantages, whatever you want to call it. So first off, we'll start with JPEG. JPEG stands for Joint Photographic Experts Group, the name of the committee that created the JPEG standard and some other still picture coding standards, and was developed in 1992. This file type is generally universal and is generally used by every digital tech company around the globe. Now, JPEG is the sort of image you generally get straight out of the camera, where the camera chooses what parts it wants to keep and the others of which it wants to compress into a smaller image. Now, this comes with its pros and cons. Pros being, you don't really need to edit a JPEG photo. All the color data, all the storage data, it is embedded within the photo itself. Also, the file sizes tend to be a lot smaller, and that's due to the compression of the image within the camera. The file sizes depend on the camera and how the camera compresses it. For example, a larger sensored camera will be a larger file, and a smaller sensored camera, a much smaller file. This file size also means you don't have to wait forever for the file to load, especially when looking online. Some cons of JPEGs. Now, with a JPEG, and you get it out your camera, that is what you're stuck with. You have a very, very small amount of editing space which you can use before the image gets corrupted. For example, an area that is slightly or very overexposed and is practically white, you're not going to be able to pull any data out of that at all. That area is now just white, and the same with blacks. So if you shoot JPEG, you generally have to take more care when it comes to taking photos. For example, with a landscape, rather than just taking the landscape and fixing it in post when the sky's a little bit blown out, you'll have to use something like a gradient filter, so it exposes the sky properly and the ground properly in photo, so you can't really fix it in post. Up next, we're going to talk about RAW. A RAW file is a digital image file that has been minimally processed and non-compressed. Every camera manufacturer has their own type of RAW file. For example, Canon has CR2 and CR3, whilst Nikon are NEF. Even phones these days are using RAW photos. They use something called a DNG file, which is a global or universal style of RAW photos that are designed for smaller cameras. And Apple even have their own version of RAW, which is ProRAW. So we'll start with some of the cons of shooting RAW. Shooting in this format takes up a lot of space. It is not compressing the image at all, it is what is captured on the camera. So a RAW file tends to work out to the same amount of megapixels that the sensor is. For example, I'm shooting on a 20 megapixel sensor, so the RAW file will probably be around 20 megabytes. Compare this to a JPEG of a reasonable quality, you're going to be looking at about 5 times smaller, and it does make a difference when you're shooting with a small SD card. Another disadvantage is you can't just grab these files and post them. They are the raw data of a photograph captured from the sensor, which means they're very, very unsaturated. You always need to edit a raw photo for it to look any good. They are also such a large file, obviously, that you can't just post them online because the storage of the website will just crash essentially, and you won't be able to open the files. Some advantages of the RAW files though. The main reason people shoot with RAW photos is the fact it stores every ounce of image data. You can look at a RAW photo that looks super dark, underexposed, with lots of black sections. Bring up the exposure and those blacks can become super detailed. This means you can recover previously bad looking photos. The freedom of how you want to make these photos is also amazing. You can do anything with it. The hues, the saturation, the contrast, the exposure. You can add detail, you can remove sections, you can crop in a lot and not lose any of the image quality. That's why most photographers will tend to shoot in RAW, because it is essentially, you can shoot anything you want and you can save the photo. You can manipulate the photo how you want to see it and how you envision the photo. So, to conclude, it really just depends on what you shoot. If you're an avid landscape photographer that has a lot of time on your hand, most of them will happily shoot JPEG because they'll have gradient filters. They'll spend hours sat on top of a hill meticulously planning a shot where they want to capture the exact look of the landscape that they're shooting and don't want to edit it too much in post to ruin it, essentially. But say someone like a wedding photographer that wants to capture every single little detail that they physically can and want to have that backup of just in case they get a little bit overexposed on one of the most important shots, they know they can save that image. So it is just a matter of what you shoot. So let me know in the comments of which format you shoot with and why. Like, I personally shoot RAW. I have shot RAW since I've been capable of with the camera that I used. It's never really gone wrong for me because I have anxiety, and if I mess up a photo, I'm gonna have a panic attack. But that does it for this video, and I hope you enjoyed it. Just a fun little sort of information-based video. I shall see you in the next video. Peace.